You know, we are constantly told to treat our brains like these, well, high-performance engines.
Right.
Like, if you want the machine to run smoothly as you get older, you have to be incredibly careful about what you put in the tank.
That is the prevailing wisdom, yeah. And for decades, the medical and nutritional worlds were, they were very specific about what kind of fuel that engine needed.
Exactly.
We were told quite emphatically to go low fat,
Yeah.
to avoid clogging up the gears.
Right. The whole cultural message was that dietary fat was just the absolute enemy of a healthy cardiovascular system, and by extension, a healthy brain.
Absolutely.
But looking at the stack of research papers, the clinical trial data, and the medical journals you've shared with us today,
Yeah.
it's wild. We are going to look at one groundbreaking piece of source material that completely flips that script.
It really does.
So today we are going on a deep dive into the pre-DMED study.
Yeah.
This was a massive clinical trial evaluating how a Mediterranean diet, specifically one supplemented with either extra virgin olive oil or mixed nuts, impacts brain health in older adults.
It is just a phenomenal data set. We are looking at a monumental effort to understand age-related cognitive decline and fighting it with a highly enjoyable weapon.
Food.
Exactly, food. And our mission today is to distill this dense clinical trial into actionable, fascinating insights for you.
Right.
We want to cut through the medical jargon to show you exactly how and why upgrading your dietary fats might literally, physically protect your brain's processing power.
Because the radical premise of this research is exactly that. What if the high-performance engine in your head actually needs more fat to function properly?
Yeah, exactly.
Provided, of course, that it is the premium Mediterranean kind of fat. Okay, let's unpack this. The pre-DMED sub-study we were looking at, it included 447 cognitively healthy volunteers from Barcelona, Spain.
Right.
And their mean age was roughly 67 years old. But the detail that really stands out to me here is that these individuals were explicitly chosen because they were at high cardiovascular risk.
Yeah, that is a critical point. To even be included in this trial, the participants had to either have type 2 diabetes or at least 3 major cardiovascular risk factors.
Oh, okay, like what?
We are talking about hypertension, being a current smoker, having a family history of early heart disease, or, having a high body mass index.
So these aren't just naturally pristine, ultra-healthy marathon runners.
No, not at all.
These are people whose vascular systems were already under significant stress.
Far from pristine, yeah. And that is exactly the demographic you want to look at if you are trying to prevent cognitive decline, because vascular health and brain health are so tightly linked.
Right.
Now, you might be thinking, well, haven't we always known the Mediterranean diet was good for us?
I feel like I've been hearing about the Mediterranean diet since the early 2000s. It always seemed like common knowledge that people in Southern Europe just happen to live longer with less dementia.
They do, yeah. But until this study, most of the data we had was purely observational.
Oh, meaning they just looked at populations.
Exactly. Epidemiologists would look at those populations and note the association. But the problem with observational studies is that they are plagued by too many tangled up lifestyle factors.
Like what else they might be doing.
Right. The people who adhere strictly to a Mediterranean diet might just have generally healthier lifestyles overall. Maybe they walk more, or have less stressful jobs, or get more sunshine.
You can't separate the olive oil from the evening strolls.
Precisely. That is why this study is so important. That this wasn't just observing people who already ate well. This was a ground-up, gold standard scientific intervention.
A primary prevention randomized clinical trial.
Exactly. They actively manipulated the diet of hundreds of people to see if they could stop brain decline in its tracks before it started. They designed a behavioral intervention to prove direct cause and effect.
Which brings up something that actually surprised me about the trial design. Usually when I think of a clinical diet, I picture absolute misery. Like, I picture restrictive calorie counting, sad little steamed vegetables, and just being hungry all the time.
Okay.
But this trial actively encouraged participants to eat more fat.
It really did.
The researchers told them they could eat as much as they wanted until they were completely full, as long as it was the right kind of fat. It's like being prescribed a medical treatment that requires you to eat delicious food until you're stuffed.
It is certainly a departure from the punitive diets of the past.
Mm-hmm.
It is basically a prescription that says, please go eat delicious, rich food until you are satisfied.
Amazing.
And to actually test this in the real world, the researchers set up 3 distinct intervention groups.
Okay, so group 1 was assigned a Mediterranean diet, but they were specifically supplemented with extra virgin olive oil, or EVOO.
Right.
And they weren't just given a little drizzle for their salads. The researchers literally gave them 1 liter of extra virgin olive oil every single week.
A full liter. And they deliberately provided enough for the entire family. They knew that if only one person in a household was trying to use this specific oil, they wouldn't stick to the plan.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, by giving them a liter a week, they ensured the participant could use it for all their cooking, frying, and dressing. It completely replaced the other cooking fats in the household.
That is incredibly smart.
Yeah.
It removes the friction of having to cook 2 separate meals.
Exactly.
But olive oil isn't always practical for a quick snack on the go, which brings us to the second intervention group. They were also assigned a Mediterranean diet, but instead of the olive oil, they were supplemented with 30 grams per day of mixed nuts.
Right, and the breakdown of those nuts is very specific. It was 15 grams of walnuts, 7.5 grams of hazelnuts, and 7.5 grams of almonds.
Is that ratio important?
It is, because different nuts bring different nutritional profiles to the table, which we'll get into when we look at the biology.
Okay.
And finally, there was the third group, which served as the control. They were instructed to follow a standard low-fat diet.
So they just got counseling and leaflets on how to reduce all types of dietary fat.
Exactly.
So we have these 3 groups, and they're out living their lives in Barcelona for years. But human beings are notoriously bad at following diets. How did the researchers actually know the participants weren't cheating?
Whoa.
You can't just trust a self-reported survey where someone checks a box saying they drank their olive oil.
You absolutely cannot. Self-reported diet data is notoriously unreliable. So the researchers used objective biochemical markers.
Okay.
To prove the participants were actually consuming the olive oil, researchers tested their urine for a specific compound called hydroxytyrosol.
Wait, why look in the urine for olive oil?
Because when your body metabolizes the rich, complex compounds found in extra virgin olive oil, the resulting byproducts like hydroxytyrosol get flushed out through your kidneys.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. If it's in the urine, it means the oil was actually processed by the body. And to prove the nut intake, they tested the participants' blood plasma for alpha-linolenic acid.
Which comes from the nuts.
Right, it's highly concentrated in walnuts specifically.
I love that. You can lie in a survey, but you can't lie to a blood test.
Nope.
So the researchers knew for a fact that the protocols were being followed, and they tracked these people for a median of 4.1 years.
That's right.
Which is a long time to monitor someone's brain. But cognitive health feels so subjective. How do you actually measure an abstract concept like attention or memory?
They used a battery of highly standardized neuropsychological tests. They didn't just ask, hey, how is your memory feeling today?
Right.
For example, to assess memory, they used the Ray Auditory Verbal Learning Test. This involves reading a list of words to the participant and asking them to recall as many as possible immediately, and then again after a delay.
Which translates in the real world to, like, hearing a grocery list from your spouse and actually remembering what to buy when you get to the store 30 minutes later.
Exactly, that real-world application. And to measure things like attention, visual motor speed, and cognitive flexibility, they use tests like the color trail test.
Walk me through that one. What does that actually look like for the person taking it?
Okay, so imagine a piece of paper with numbered circles scattered all over it.
Okay.
But the circles alternate in color, say pink and yellow. The participant has to draw a line connecting them in numerical order, but they also have to alternate colors.
Oh, wow.
So it's 1 pink, 2 yellow, 3 pink, 4 yellow. It physically forces your brain to juggle multiple rules at once.
That sounds frustrating even on a good day. But I see how it measures executive function. In everyday life, that's the difference between smoothly cooking a multi-step dinner versus walking into the kitchen and completely forgetting what you were doing halfway through.
Precisely. And to make sense of all these different tests over 4 years, the researchers grouped the scores into 3 main composites.
Okay, what were they?
There was a memory composite, a frontal composite, which covers that attention and executive function we just talked about, and a global cognition composite, which is an overall snapshot of brain health.
So we have our 3 groups. We have our objective biochemical tests proving they followed the diets, and we have over 4 years of rigorous cognitive testing. What actually happened to their brains?
Well, let's start with the control group, the ones told to follow the standard low-fat diet. Over the course of the study, they experienced a significant decrease in all three cognitive composites.
Meaning their memory, their executive function, and their global cognition all measurably went down.
Yes. What we are seeing there is the normal trajectory of age-related cognitive decline. As they aged from roughly 67 to 71, their brains naturally lost some of that processing power.
But the two Mediterranean diet groups completely defied that decline.
They did.
The group taking the extra virgin olive oil actually saw improved frontal function and improved global cognition. And the group eating the mixed nuts saw significant improvements in their memory composite.
That's exactly what the data showed.
So what does this all mean? If we think about the brain like a computer, it really is like giving yourself a targeted hardware upgrade.
That's a really great way to visualize it.
Like, the olive oil is basically upgrading your processor.
Yeah.
It's enhancing your executive function, your attention, and your overall global computing power. Meanwhile, the nuts are expanding your hard drive. They are specifically protecting and improving your memory storage and retrieval.
Right.
But why the difference? It makes me wonder what is actually happening inside the brain cells to cause a brain to slow down in the first place.
To understand why the processor and the hard drive responded differently, we really have to look under the hood.
Okay.
Cognitive decline is largely driven by two insidious biological forces: oxidative stress and vascular impairment. Let's start with oxidative stress.
Right.
Your brain is incredibly metabolically active. It only makes up about 2% of your body weight, but it uses 20% of your energy.
So it's an engine running hot all the time.
Yes. And generating all that cellular energy is a messy process. It produces exhaust, specifically molecules called free radicals.
Okay, I've heard of those.
Yeah, and if there is no biological ventilation to clear them out, these free radicals bounce around and literally damage the cellular machinery over time.
So the extra virgin olive oil must act like a ventilation system for that exhaust.
Precisely.
But the study specifies that it must be extra virgin olive oil. Why does that matter? Like, why can't I just use the cheap, clear, refined oil in the plastic bottle?
Oh, the distinction is critical. Regular refined olive oil has been subjected to chemical and physical processing that strips out its most potent weapons.
Which are what?
Polyphenols. Extra virgin olive oil is just the cold-pressed juice of the olive. Because it isn't heavily processed, it retains massive amounts of these phenolic compounds.
So what do these polyphenols actually do when they get into the brain?
They are aggressive antioxidants. They literally hunt down those free radicals and neutralize them, clearing out the oxidative stress.
Wow.
But it goes beyond just cleaning up cellular exhaust. These compounds have been shown to physically improve how well your blood vessels expand and contract.
Meaning better blood flow.
Exactly. Improved cerebrovascular blood flow, which means more oxygen and nutrients actively reaching your brain cells. There is even experimental evidence suggesting that specific components in extra virgin olive oil, like oleocanthal, can enhance the clearance of beta amyloid from the brain.
Beta amyloid being the sticky plaque protein that builds up and is heavily linked to Alzheimer's disease.
Right.
So instead of just letting that plaque accumulate, the extra virgin olive oil helps the brain's nighttime waste management system basically take out the biological trash.
That's a perfect way to put it.
That perfectly explains the processor upgrade. But what about the nuts? Why did they specifically boost the memory hard drive?
That comes down to their unique fatty acid profile, particularly the walnuts. Walnuts are unique among nuts because they contain a significant amount of alpha-linolenic acid.
Which is a plant-based omega-3 fatty acid, right? I know our brains are structurally made of a huge amount of fat.
Exactly. Your brain desperately needs omega-3s to maintain the physical membranes of its neurons. And experimental studies show that providing this specific fatty acid actually enhances brain plasticity. It helps neurons form new connections and physically strengthens the synapses where memories are stored.
So by eating the nuts, you are literally giving your brain the structural building blocks it needs to build stronger memory networks.
Yes, and we can't forget the heart-brain connection here either. Remember, these participants were at high risk for cardiovascular disease.
Right, from the beginning.
The data from the broader pre-DIME study showed that these Mediterranean diets dramatically improved blood pressure and reduced the risk of stroke by up to 49% in the nuts group.
Wait, really? That is massive, nearly cutting the stroke risk in half.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the brain does not exist in a vacuum. It relies on a massive, intricate network of blood vessels. It demands a huge portion of the blood pumped by the heart.
So if the plumbing is clear...
Exactly. What heals the heart heals the brain. If you keep the blood vessels flexible and clear of blockages, The brain gets the constant supply of fuel and oxygen it needs to maintain its cognitive reserve. Fighting dementia really must start in the preclinical stage through exactly this kind of holistic vascular protection.
Here's where it gets really interesting for anyone who grew up terrified of the calorie counts in dietary fats.
Oh, absolutely.
These participants were pouring a liter of olive oil over their food every week, or eating handfuls of calorie-dense nuts every single day without any calorie restriction. And they didn't gain weight. That completely shatters the old low-fat paradigm.
It does. I mean, the old assumption was always a simple equation. Fat equals weight gain.
Right.
But these premium fats profoundly enhance satiety. They make you feel full and deeply satisfied, so you naturally end up eating fewer processed carbohydrates and empty calories throughout the day.
That makes sense.
Your metabolism responds positively to these functional, nutrient-dense foods in a way it just doesn't to a low-fat diet packed with refined sugars.
It makes complete sense when you think about how you feel after eating a handful of rich walnuts versus eating an entire bag of big. That's a fair point to mention. And what about the demographic itself? These participants were older, hovering around 67 years old, and they were specifically selected because they already had a high risk for cardiovascular disease. Does this mean a healthy 20-year-old wouldn't see the same cognitive benefits?
Well, we can't definitively say the exact same curve applies to a young, perfectly healthy individual.
Right.
When a vascular system is already compromised, introducing a powerful therapeutic intervention like extra virgin olive oil is going to show a much more dramatic contrast than introducing it to a perfectly clean vascular system.
That makes sense.
However, the biological mechanisms at play here, the reduction of oxidative stress, the improvement in how well blood vessels function, the provision of omega-3s for neuronal structure, those are universally beneficial human biological processes.
So given everything we've looked at in this source material, how should you, the listener, apply this to your own life starting today?
Knowledge is most valuable when it is applied. The takeaway for you isn't to just start doing shots of olive oil on top of a terrible fast food diet. The takeaway is to fundamentally shift your dietary pattern.
So you want to replace processed refined fats with extra virgin olive oil. When you cook, when you dress a salad, make EDO your default.
Exactly.
And when you reach for a mid-afternoon snack, swap out the refined carbohydrates, the crackers, the chips, the cookies, for a handful of mixed walnuts, almonds, and hazelnuts.
About 30 grams a day, which is roughly a small handful. This raises an important question for you right now. How is your current pantry setup actively helping or hindering your long-term cognitive reserve?
Oh, that's a great question.
Because every single meal is an opportunity. It is an opportunity to either induce oxidative stress or to provide the antioxidants and structural fats needed to clear it out.
To sum it all up, what the pre-med study gives us is absolute proof that a Mediterranean diet rich in extra virgin olive oil and mixed nuts isn't just some trendy theoretical heart health fad.
No, not at all.
It is a clinically proven biological shield against age-related cognitive decline. We have the objective blood tests and the rigorous cognitive scores to prove it.
We finally have the causal evidence showing that upgrading the quality of your dietary fat provides a direct protective effect on your cognitive architecture.
It leaves you with a really profound thought to mull over. If specific dietary fats can physically alter the trajectory of our brains and actively delay cognitive decline, how much of what we currently accept as inevitable, normal aging, is actually just the cumulative effect of long-term nutritional starvation?
It forces us to rethink the entire paradigm of aging.
Is cognitive decline truly a failure of age, or is it simply a failure of fuel? The next time you sit down to a meal, think about that engine in your head. Are you giving it the premium fuel it needs to run for decades to come, or are you just letting the exhaust build up? Think about it. We'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.